This is the EWN Podcast Network.
Welcome to Late Boomers, our podcast guide to creating your third act with style, power, and impact. Hi, I'm Kathy Worthington.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Join us as we bring you conversations with successful entrepreneurs, entertainers, and people with vision who are making a difference in the world.
Everyone has a story, and we'll take you along for the ride on each interview, recounting the journey our guests have taken to get where they are, inspiring you to create your own path to success. Let's get started. Hello, I'm Kathy Worthington. Welcome to our newest episode of Late Boomers. Today, our guest is Dan Harary, noted Hollywood publicist and owner of the Asbury PR agency of Beverly Hills. During the course of his career, Dan has rubbed shoulders with the music and entertainment industry's biggest stars, ranging from Steven Spielberg to Jerry Seinfeld, Barbra Streisand to the band Kiss, Brooke Shields and Bruce Springsteen and The Who, and hundreds of others.
And I'm Mary Elkins. He's also the author of 3 books to date, Carrots, After They Came, and the one we will be talking about today, Flirting with Fame. The book recounts his teen years working with iconic musicians in his hometown of Asbury Park, New Jersey, and his later days in Hollywood working alongside the most famous TV and film stars. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. I'm listening to my introduction. I'm like, boy, I'd like to meet that guy.
Exactly.
And we're so happy to have met him.
He sounds pretty.
We're happy to introduce you to our listeners.
I'd like to have a
I'd
like to have a drink with that man.
You will. Please tell us about your early days and what inspired you to become a publicist.
Okay, so I have I have to say, I'm sure my story is very unique in the world. I grew up just outside Asbury Park, New Jersey. My parents were from Brooklyn. They married in Manhattan. They moved to Asbury Park in the early 50s. And I was actually born in Asbury Park. My dad was an electronics engineer for the government, for the U.S. Army, actually. My dad was a genius electronics engineer for the Army. And my third book, After They Came, about UFOs, I dedicate to my dad because I actually think my dad knew about UFOs, but he was in a top secret military program and he never talked about it. But I have a feeling that he knew because in 1970, my dad and I saw a huge UFO together. It was shaped like a V. Huge silver V, and I was jumping up and down, Dad, a UFO, and my father looked at it like he knew what it was. And after he passed, I called my mother, and she told me some more information about my father, and now I'm convinced that my dad knew about UFOs. So that's why I wrote my book called
Dan, that is amazing because I just interject, and you go back to your story in a minute. My father was an electronics engineer for the government working in the Army, and he never talked about anything they worked on because everything was top secret.
Top secret.
That's so interesting.
Top secret. Early on,
go back to your background.
Early on, my dad saw something. My dad worked for the Army 1951 to 1996, Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, just next to Asbury Park. And in the early 50s, he saw something in the vaults that was top secret. So he came home, and my mother noticed he was white and pale and shaky and very nervous. And she said, "Honey, what's wrong?" And he goes, "I saw something today above top secret. I could never tell you as long as I live." And he never told anyone ever his whole life. He never told anyone what it was. I believe he saw a recovered UFO because he was a designer. My dad designed drones. My dad was one of the first people in the world to help invent drones.
Wow.
So anyway, I could do UFOs and my dad for hours, and I've done it. That's all over the world. That's a whole other story. Anyway, so I grew up in Asbury Park. My dad worked for the Army. My mom was a teacher and a singer and a playwright and an actress.
Mm-hmm.
So I have I'm an interesting character, and I'm a Gemini. So I'm a Gemini, and I got my mom's creativity brain. I got my dad's science brain. I'm not a genius like he was. But so I have the best of science and the best of art, half.
Hmm.
Let's see.
But what
I
inspired you to become a publicist?
well, wait. We're not even close to that yet.
Oh, all right. Sorry. Sorry.
All right. My dad played trombone. My mother was a singer, so they were both musicians as well, and they were in plays and shows and concerts my whole childhood. So from 7 to 10, I played classical piano. I was very, very good at piano. 1966, the Monkees came on TV. I was 10 years old, and I fell in love with Mickey Dolenz. And said to my parents, "I'm not a pianist anymore. I'm now a drummer." And I've been a drummer. I've been a drummer since the day the Monkees came on. I'm still a drummer. I still play the drum.
You are.
I'm a very good drummer. I've been a drummer since 10. And when I met Mickey in 1986, I met Mickey at Columbia Pictures. And I said, "Mickey, I've been playing drums my whole life because of you." And he goes, "That's cool. I hear that all the time." So that was very cool. I got to meet my childhood hero.
Oh,
So I played drums in high school. At one point, I had extremely long hair. Me and my best friend Steve, he was a guitarist, and we were in a lot of rock bands together. And we played at every dance, at every high school talent show, and we did all that for years. Along the way, we met an older guy who was doing lighting, stage crew and lights at a little place called the Sunshine Inn in Asbury Park, right near the ocean. And in the early 70s, the Sunshine Inn had the biggest rock bands in the world, before they were famous. And they all played there. So from age 15 to 18, when this guy went off to college, 15 to 18, me and my best friend Steve ran the Sunshine Inn, and we worked with
Hmm.
Kiss before they were famous, Fleetwood Mac before they were Humble Pie, Jay Giles, Deep Purple, Edgar Winter, Martha Hoople, Richie Haven. I mean, the list was incredibly long. The most remarkable ones for Kiss, when we worked with Kiss, it was their first show they ever did that was not in New York City. And when I saw Gene Simmons again a few years ago, I said, "Gene, I met you in 1973. He goes, "Don't you mean 1873? So I thought that was really
he's a
fun.
nice guy.
And we
Yeah.
worked with Fleetwood Mac before they were famous. But the famous one, of course, is Bruce.
Bruce.
So Bruce was from the Jersey Shore. My friends and I knew Bruce for years. He played in bars for $1, literally $1. The first time I ever saw Bruce was at the Jewish YMHA for $1. I was in the front row. In 1972, he didn't even have the E Street Band. It was called the Bruce Springsteen and Friends. They spelled his name wrong on the flyer, and to this day, I wish I'd
Oh.
saved it because it said Bruce Springsteen, Stein, and we all thought he was Jewish because he played Jewish Y. It said Bruce Springsteen, $1, the door. So in '73, I did stage crew and lights with Bruce. Clarence Clemens, the sax player, had just joined the band that same week, and his first album had just come out that same week. After that show, Clarence asked me and my friend if we wanted to go on the road with them to be their road crew. And I go, "Clarence, we're 16, we don't drive, and our fathers want us to go to college." So I turned down, Steve and I turned down being Bruce Springsteen's road crew, which is not a great honor, I don't think. But we turned it down. It just didn't make sense to do that.
Would have changed your career.
I would have been schlepping amplifiers for 50 years, and
Yeah, and you wanted to be a musician.
and I'd be deaf. So I'm glad I turned it down. It was the right. Plus, my father would have killed me if I didn't go to college. My father would have absolutely killed me.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had no chance. After high school, so in high school, I worked with the biggest rock bands in the world. I never got paid there, but I used to sneak our friends in, and we sat inside the stage. There was a pit inside the stage, so I think I made $50 there. In 4 years, I made $50. So, and we didn't get it. The owner never paid us, but it was a remarkable thing to do in retrospect to work there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I went to Boston University. I studied communications. This is in the '70s, and Howard Stern was in my school 2 years ahead of me. Howard Stern, the famous radio jock.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him walking around the halls because he's 6'5" or something. I didn't meet him then, but he had a radio show then while I was at school there. And my friends used to say, "Hey, have you heard this crazy guy, Howard Stern? He's so funny." And I didn't like to wake up at 6 in the morning, so I never heard him. but I knew of him. And then when I met him 10 years later in Hollywood, we spoke about Boston University. After college, I got a job in Manhattan through a friend at Columbia Pictures publicity department. And this is 1980. But here's the problem. I lived in New Jersey. I had no money at all. I had zero money. And I got a job in Manhattan. So I had to commute from the Jersey Shore to Manhattan. That was 4 hours a day on a bus. 4 hours a day times 20 hours a week on a bus. And I didn't last. I was there for 4 months and I couldn't do it. It was so hard to commute. During that time, I did work with Brooke Shields and her mother, terrible Terry Shields. They were promoting the movie The Blue Lagoon, which made Brooke quite famous. So one of my stories is that me, Brooke Shields, and her mother, and no one else on the planet saw the Blue Lagoon together. Just the three of us sat there and watched Blue Lagoon together. And at the end, I said, Brooke, you were really good. And she goes, oh, I was terrible. She goes, I wish this movie was never made. I hate it. And I said, why do you say that? You're going to be a big star. And the mom said, Dan, thank you. You're very kind. Everyone hated terrible Terry Shields because she was very scary. She was like a Helen Kushnick, actually. But Terry liked me because I was nice to her and Brooke. So I had a nice rapport with her and Brooke.
That's good.
So I was there for a few months. I said to my boss, I said, I can't commute. I literally, it's killing me. I can't do it. Can you please let me go so I can get unemployment? So she let me go. That summer, I wrote a screenplay on my mother's kitchen table. And then I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with my life. I really wasn't quite sure the direction. And then the universe intervened. I had two friends from New Jersey who had just moved to LA, unknown. They didn't know each other. And by coincidence, both of these friends called me and my friend Steve. My friend Steve and I were inseparable in those days. Called us and said, do you want to come visit LA? Well, you can sleep on our couch. Two different friends, two different places. But the same week that they called. So I said to my father, I go, Dad, do you think I should go to LA to visit my friends? And he goes, schmuck, move there. He goes, that's where Hollywood is. That's entertainment. He goes, why don't you just move there? And I said, oh, okay. And the entirety of my life was decided by my father in those 10 seconds. Because my father said go, and I said, okay, I'm telling you the truth. I didn't know where LA was on the map. I had to get a map. I swear to you, I had to get a map of the United States and go, oh, there it is. I didn't know where it was.
And you were done with college by then. That's bad teaching.
I knew the Jersey Shore, Manhattan, and Boston, and that was it. I'd never been anywhere. So California for me at 24 in 1980 was like going to the moon. It was going to the moon. I had no experience at that level. So I sold all my possessions except my drums, which I still have. And I came out in October 1980 with my friend Steve. And we visited our friends in LA. Then we went up to San Francisco. Then we went to San Diego. And then he went back. We hugged and he went back. And he went to New York City. Now, I got to tell you about my friend Steve. Steve opened a nightclub in New York City called The Cutting Room. And Lady Gaga was discovered by my friend Steve at The Cutting Room. He's had every rock star you could think of, has played there or had drinks there. And Steve, to this day, I call him Ed Sullivan meets P.T. Barnum. That's my friend Steve. So he did in New York kind of what I did in Hollywood. And it's very interesting. Of the people we grew up with, we're the only two that ended up in the entertainment business. My childhood best friend and I both ended up in show business.
But you guys had the training for it all during high school. You were getting prepped. That's amazing.
It just was very linear. Looking back, my career was very linear. All right, so 1980 to 81, I was a gopher. I was a receptionist for a porno company. I was a typist for a Korean law firm. I used to get people's cars washed. I was a typer, a gopher, or a secretary, or a receptionist. there was nothing linear. It wasn't a career. It was just survival, you know. January 1982, there was an ad in the LA Times for the American Film Institute, which I'd never heard of. I didn't know what it was, but I saw the word film in there. I applied. I met Gene Furstenberg. Gene was the head of AFI for many, many decades.
Mm-hmm.
She said, Dan, I'm going to hire you because you and I both went to Boston University. So Gene Furstenberg discovered me and saved me. She saved me. January 82, because I had $6. I was going to have to go home and live with my mother again in Jersey. So she saved my life. I worked at the American Institute for a year and a half. My boss was like the principal of it was a film college, and he was like the principal. Probably my funny story at AFI is Robert Wise, the Academy Award winning director, Sound of Music.
Mm-hmm.
He was a teacher there, and every time he had to pee, I had to pee. So me and Robert Wise peed together in that men's room countless times for a year and a half. And every time we did, we would look at each other and say, we simply have got to stop meeting this way. We said it every time, and we laughed. We were peeing together, me and Robert Wise. I have $6 in the world, and I'm peeing with an Academy Award-winning director. And we laughed about that every single time for almost 2 years. After that, that job got very boring. I was basically typing memos, and there was an ad in the Hollywood Reporter for production assistant wanted for the Playboy channel, of all things. So I applied on my birthday, whatever year, 1983, on my birthday, and I got hired that day. It was my birthday. And for 6 months, I worked for a really dopey TV show at Playboy called The News According to Playboy. And it was like they thought it was 60 minutes of sex is how they used to build this show. And it was just really dopey and dumb. And I was a production assistant, and I'm thinking, what have I done with my life? It's so stupid. At the end of that 6 months, there was a notice in the kitchen. I used to work at the Playboy building on Sunset near La Cienega. We used to have the bunny
I
up.
think you worked with Michael Trachillis, right?
I met, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
It had the bunny on the building. Now it's a different building. They crafted it so it's a different building now. But there was an ad that said publicist wanted for the Playboy channel. So I applied. I got hired. So January 1st, 1984, this is when I start my clock of being a publicist. January 1st, 84, I was the very first publicist ever for the Playboy channel. Now, the sad thing is I had just met my wife, and we were engaged to be married. And now I'm meeting the most beautiful girls in America every single day for the next 2 years. Every single day, I'm working and meeting and working with the prettiest girls in the United States of America every single day. And I was living with my fiance, and the timing was very, very. I'll just say, the timing was very, very bad for me personally. Because these girls, some of them were throwing themselves at me. And I'm like, don't cheat on your wife. Don't cheat on your wife. Can't do it. Can't do it. Don't cheat. So I never did cheat on her. I worked with Hefner at the mansion for some press conferences we did up there together. He was very nice to me. And, I grew up with Playboy magazines. And me and my friends used to steal Playboys, when we were little kids to look at naked.
That was the thing to do then.
I mean, there was no porn on the internet then. It was either Playboys or Barbara Eden in I Dream of Jeannie or Tina Louise from Gilligan's Island. There weren't any other sex symbols that you could see with your eyes. So now, for a guy who grew up with Playboy and now I'm hanging out with Hugh Hefner, and I'm doing nude photo shoots with the prettiest girls in America, and my wife is calling me, bring home bread and milk when you come home tonight. It was just an incredible dichotomy that happened. So I was there for several years, Playboy, greatest job in the history of the world for a straight man, except I made no money. I made no money.
Oh.
The money was horrible. But as a straight man, it was all my friends were so jealous Man,
Yeah, I bet.
I had the best
I
job in the
bet.
United States. After that, I ended up at Columbia Pictures Television as a senior publicist. I met someone, and that changed my life because now I was making 3 times my salary at Play.
Well, I have to ask you now, tell us about some of the big projects you've worked on.
Um, well, I was. Do you want me to finish out the linear? Because this is 30 years ago. Is where I'm up to now. Yeah, let me glass over, and then I'll answer you. Can I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I was at Columbia Television for several years, and I met a lot of big stars there. Then I worked for Lee Solters, who's a very famous publicist. He passed away, but when I worked
I
for
know
Lee
we.
Solters, he had Barbra Streisand, Frank Sinatra, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, Dolly Parton, Jay Leno, and Van Halen all at the same time. All the biggest stars in the world. I was Jay Leno's publicist for 2 years during when I worked with Lee Solters. Then from there, I went to the Lippin Group, which I don't like talking about because it was a hard period of my life. But I was there for almost 8 years, and I developed a following of clients because I'm good at what I do. So now we come to 1996. I turned 40. I had an epiphany. I was at a meeting with some clients at the Four Seasons Hotel in Beverly Hills, and the chandelier, I swear to you, the chandelier in the Beverly Hills Four Seasons, the chandelier said, Dan, start your own business. As I'm in a meeting, I said, Dan, start your own business. I looked up. I said, what? And I said, oh, okay. And I went home, and the next 2 days later, I had $1 million business from this because the chandelier told me.
Oh, wow.
So I went there the other day to say, I really did. The other day, I said, thank you. This is the chandelier. It's still there.
Is it the same chandelier?
It saved my life. Yeah,
Still.
it changed my life entirely.
Yeah,
Chandelier
that
at the
sounds
Four
great.
Seasons changed my life.
Well, you
Okay,
got to listen to those things.
it was remarkable.
You do.
My mother goes, "Don't tell anyone; they'll think you're insane." I said, "Mom, it's a true story. The chandelier spoke." So that's how I launched Asbury PR Agency. So this year it's 27 years old. It's just me. When I started it, I had 6 full-time employees in Hollywood and a guy in New York.
Gee.
Now it's just me. It's been very successful. I have an incredible run. Um, Today, my 2 biggest clients are restaurants. I represent Musso and Frank in Hollywood, the most famous restaurant in LA.
Mm.
I got them when they
Mary
turned.
and my
We love
favorite place.
Musos.
We
Everyone
go a
loves.
lot.
Everyone
We
loves.
do.
I got them when they turned 100. In advance of their 100th, I wrote a snail mail letter to the owner, and I said, "You don't know me, but I've been going there 35 years. I know you're about to turn 100. I'm a major publicist. I really would like to meet you and be involved." And he invited me to lunch, and I've been his publicist for over 4 years now. So I did all the
Hmm.
PR for the 100th year anniversary. I helped them get a star in they're the only restaurant that ever got a star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Nice.
That's uncanny. That's really an accomplishment.
They have a book that I helped promote, and they opened some new dining rooms at the end of 2021, which I did. So
Hmm.
I'm considered a member of the Musso and Frank family, which is probably
That's lovely.
probably the honor. It's probably the biggest honor of my career. I also represent
Mm.
El Cholo Mexican restaurant, and
Great restaurant.
they turned 100 this year. They're 100 right now this
Hmm.
year. So we're doing a lot of press. I got them into the New York Times. We're doing a lot of press for their 100th anniversary. Mary, to answer you, over the course of my life, I've worked Grammy Awards. I've worked a bunch of AFI Lifetime Achievement Awards. I invented the Environmental Media Awards. I literally invented that one. And I ran that for PR for the first 4 years, I think it was. Um, I opened a Space Center Houston for NASA.
Wow.
Um, God, what have I done? I announced the sequel to It's a Wonderful Life. There was a few years ago, there was going to be a sequel to It's a Wonderful Life. I announced that. I ran all over the world. And then 3 weeks later, the producer died.
So that never happened.
No,
Oh,
It
That's
was
kind of a funny
Jeez.
story. Tell us some of your other funniest celebrity stories.
well, no, that's my whole book. That's my whole book, Flirting with Fame. That's my whole book.
Oh, yeah.
Um, 1980,
Tell us a few.
sure. 1981, I just got to LA. I used to get people's cars washed. That was my job. I was a gopher. I got people's cars washed. I'm getting a BMW or Mercedes, whatever it was, washed at the Sunset Car Wash on Sunset Boulevard. I have
Mhm.
literally $6 to my name in life. That's a true story. $6. My dad had to come and give me money. I had $6. I'm driving a BMW to the Sunset Car Wash. I get out. Next to me is Jerry Seinfeld getting his car washed. We're the only two people at the car wash. I had seen him a year before in Manhattan and with my friend Steve, and we laughed so hard we were crying into our cocktail napkins. He was so incredibly funny. So now it's 81. I go, Jerry Seinfeld? He goes, yes. I go, my name is Dan. And I shook his hand and I said, I'm your biggest fan. To which he said, gee, I didn't know I had any fans. That's a true story. I'm Jerry Seinfeld's very, very first fan. We spoke for a
Hmm.
bit, and then I said, Jerry, you just moved out here. I just moved out here. We're about the same age. Can we be friends? I said to Jerry, can we be friends? And he hemmed and hawed, and he said, well, if you want to get me, here's my manager's business card. And that was the end of that. 12 years later, 1993, I met Jerry again in San Francisco at a NATB TV convention. Now he's famous because he's selling the Seinfeld show. When I met him in '81, no one knew him. Oh, when I met him in '81, I said, "Why are you getting your car washed? Any particular reason?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm about to make my debut on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson." He made his debut the day I met him that night.
Wow.
Mhm.
1993, San Francisco. I bumped into him. Now he's the biggest comedian in the world. And I said, Jerry, we met in 1981 at the Sunset Car Wash. You made your debut on the Tonight Show. And he goes, I remember you. You wanted to be my friend. He pulled his hand out of our handshake and he turned and he walked away. He probably thought I was gay. So I met him in West Hollywood at the Sunset.
Yeah, I guess so.
He remembered me
Oh,
from 12 years earlier. I remember you. You wanted to be my friend. So that story always gets a big laugh. Big laugh.
Yeah, it's really
it's
strange
it's
and
a
weird
great
and
story.
so
Strange.
Hollywood.
Um,
Yeah, but
1996, I'm at the Friars Club. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Milton Berle were the guests of honor. I knew Arnold would be there. My son was a huge, huge fan of the Terminator. He was 8 years old at the time. So I knew Arnold would be there. I told my son, I'll try to get you Arnold's autograph. So I walk in with a photograph of Arnold as the Terminator with a white marking pen. Had it in my hand. And during a break, in the evening. People weren't eating. It was just a break. I went up to my tapped him on the shoulder. I go, Arnold, my name is Dan. I go, my son is 8 years old. He loves the Terminator. He's such a fan of yours. Could I possibly have an autograph? So I presented Arnold with the pen and the photo. He looked at me like this.
he growled at you.
I swear. So I'm like, Arnold, he's 8 years old. It'll take you 2 seconds, man. Please, can you do this for me? Steam is shooting out of his head, literally steam, bright red. He's so angry, like he wanted to kill me or eat me or both. Like this. Now I'm starting to shake, but I'm thinking, I'm not leaving without this autograph for my son. I'm not going to leave. So we had these two huge bodyguards were standing right behind me. So I'm like, one of us
Yeah,
has.
because he'd already been the governor by that time. He was done being the governor.
No, no, this is before he was the governor. This is
Oh,
96. This is 96. This is
oh,
before he
okay.
became the governor. These two guys had the little earbuds, this like Secret Service guys. They were like this, like I was gonna get killed for this autograph. I just said, please, Arnold, please, come on, it will mean so much to him. So finally, he grabs the pen and the photo, and he writes to Jordan, best wishes, Arnold, Terminators, whatever, and he goes, give it back. I got the autograph. My son has it on his wall in Alaska. Yeah, we got it. It worked, but boy, was he pissed. He never said one word to me in English. It was just animal
Oh, gee.
sound.
Well, your book is just I've been reading it. It's such fun, Flirting with Fame.
Thank
And I mean, did you keep a diary, a journal of all of these meetings? Because you seem to remember so many. And also, I have to ask you why you decided to write it all down and become an author.
Great questions. Um, it was, when did I write that? It was COVID. So when COVID really kicked in 2020, my PR business just slowed down tremendously. And I had very little to do. And one day I just literally sat on my couch and I took a piece of paper and I said, to myself, I've met a lot of celebrities. I should write them down. And I just wrote down as many celebrities as I've ever met in my life on a piece of paper. And it was page after page after page. And then so many, I was like, wow, maybe this is a book. That's what I said to maybe this is a book. Then I put them in chronological order of how I met them. And then I just sat and wrote the book from 2020 to like 2021. I just wrote it. It just came out. It just came out. I'm like an idiot savant with my memory. Like once, and I think
I was about to ask something like that because
Yeah.
I can't believe that you remembered all of that and what people said to you.
Chris Gardner did a big interview with me for the Hollywood Reporter, and he said, "Dan, you have an insane memory." And I said, "I'm either an idiot or a savant or both. I don't know what I am."
Yeah.
It just came out, so I just started writing. And so from 2020 to 2021, it took me about a year or less to write the book. And then I went through all my scrapbooks, and I realized how many photos I had. I have Mary, you'll see in the book, there's so many photos of me with celebrities. So then I had to go back through time and track down the photographers or the celebrities of
Mhm.
every one of those photos to get approvals. That took 8 months. That took 8 months. Once I had that
Right.
all done, I said to myself, all right, I have a book. What do I do now? Do you know Ray Richmond? Mary, do you know the name?
Yeah,
You know Ray?
very well.
Ray's one of my best friends. Okay. So I called Ray. I go, Ray, I just wrote this dopey book about my Hollywood career. Now, Ray has about a dozen books that he's written for others. He wrote some books about The Simpsons, I know. So I said, any ideas? And he goes, yeah, there's a company in Florida called Bear Manor, Bear, Bear Manor Media. They publish books about Hollywood. He goes, why don't you
Oh,
write to them? I said, okay. And this part, you're not even going to believe this. I still don't believe this part myself. I finished the book. I called Ray. He said, reach out to Bear Manor. I emailed Bear Manor. I said, you don't know me. I'm a Hollywood publicist. Here's who I am and what I've done. Here are some pictures. And 1 hour later, he goes, not only am I going to publish you, here's your contract. 1 hour later. So
what a
Great.
story.
I finished the book, and 1 hour later, I got a contract for a published book. And to talk about something that
That's amazing.
talk about something that
Every writer on the planet will be jealous of you.
I
Yeah.
literally thought, here's the rest of my life trying to hawk this book. 1 hour, I swear it took might have been less than an hour. So that's how
Well, you
flirting
know what,
came to be.
Dan, I think you may have had more celebrity encounters than anyone else on the planet. So if you aren't in it already, you ought to be in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Well,
Do you have any idea of how many you've met since you made that list? And is there any one person you haven't met that you'd love to meet or work with?
great question. First one, let me interject. I'm reading a book right now called Get Mahoney. It's about Jim Mahoney. Do you know who? Remember Jim Mahoney? Jim
I
Mahoney.
don't.
It's the best. Jim
I think.
Mahoney was the publicist for Clark Gable, Judy
Oh,
Garland, Frank Sinatra, Bob Hope,
Hmm.
everyone you could name in the earliest days. I'm reading his book, Get Mahoney, and it's the best book about Hollywood that I've ever read, and it's the best book about
Hmm.
public relations ever written. It blows my book out of the water. So uh, Mahoney, Jim Mahoney is the king of meeting celebrities. No one met more celebrities. He handled the Rat Pack when they were the Rat. I
Hmm.
mean, no one had more celebrities than Jim Mahoney. I'd say several hundred that I've met or worked with. Some people, Jerry Lewis winked at me. Madonna winked at me. Um, some people waved to me. I throw all those in. I mean, I didn't meet them, but Jerry Lewis winked at me, man. I was like, heaven, comedy hero. I didn't have the courage to meet him. Um,
But who's on your bucket list to meet or work with?
Yeah.
Someone asked me that recently. I would say the only two people I'd really like to meet before I die would be Barack Obama and Paul McCartney.
Mm.
And
Oh.
in fact, Paul McCartney winked at me. Paul McCartney winked at me. It's in the book. I was in the front row in Boston, sitting with like six beautiful girls. We had a Beatles fan club. I was the only guy sitting with six beautiful girls, front row. And Paul looked over at me. I think he went like this with the thumb because he saw me with all these girls. And I think
Yeah.
we either winked or but that was as close as I ever came to a Beatle was with Paul McCartney. I'd say Paul and Barack Obama. No one else really would mean that much to me.
Yeah. Fabulous list.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, tell us a little more about your celebrity encounters, and were there any encounters that perhaps you'd like to forget?
Well, that leads us to my famous Meryl Streep story. That's the one. That's the one. It still makes me cringe to this day. 19, I think it was 1990. 1990. I worked for the Lippin Group at the time. We were working with Time. It was Time Warner Television. They had a TV show called the Time Warner Earth Day Special. I believe it was 1990, the Earth Day Special. And they had a lot of stars on that show talking about the environment and how important the environment was. For the photo shoot for that, the key art for that show was a photo session with Kevin Costner and Meryl Streep, the two of them holding up a little sapling tree. So I was at the photo shoot. It's at the old ABC in Century City, where like the Schubert Theater was. It's not there anymore. It was me, all these executives from ABC, and a lot of executives from Warner Brothers. And Kevin Costner was there, and he was early, so we were mingling with him. And this is before he was super famous, and he's a very easy guy to talk to. And then someone said, she's here. Someone said to me, she's here. And I said, who's here? And they said Meryl Streep. I said, Meryl Streep's coming? No one told me that she was going to be there. Now, she was the biggest star in the world at the time, 1990. Meryl Streep's the biggest star in the world. So everyone's like, she's coming, she's coming, she's coming. So there must have been 25, 30 executives there. So we all stood in a line like the Queen of England reception line at this photo studio in ABC in Century City, the reception line. And the doors open. It's bright sun outside, and she comes in. She's all dressed in white, and like you hear the angels like, ah. It was like Mother Mary. It was literally like Mother Mary herself, literally Mother Mary just walking. Oh, you hear the angels singing. The sun is from behind her. You can't even see her face. She lifts her arms up like this, like to greet the little people, right? So everyone's like, Meryl Streep's here. Meryl Streep. Everyone's like buzzing and buzzing. So my heart starts pounding, and I don't even like Meryl Streep. I couldn't care less. But because everyone was so hyped up, I started getting nervous. So she goes to the front of the line. Hi, Miss Streep. My name is Bill. I'm the head of Warner Brothers Television. And then to the next, to the next, to the next, Meryl Streep went down the line, literally like the Queen of England, to all these people from Warner Brothers and all these people from ABC. I'm at the very tail end of this very long line. I'm at the very tail end. So she comes along, and I'm thinking, what do I say to Meryl Streep? What do I say to Meryl Streep? Why was I? I've never been a fan. Like it wasn't Paul McCartney. So I'm still, I don't know why I got so nervous, but I was very, very nervous. Next to me was a woman named Carla from Warner Brothers. Right next to me, Carla from Warner Brothers, and then me at the end. So Meryl Streep thumbs up. Now Meryl comes to Carla. Carla goes, Miss Streep, my name is Carla from Warner Brothers. Such a big fan. Such an honor to meet you. They shake hands. Okay. I'm next and I'm last. Meryl Streep now comes to me, puts out her hand, and I go, hello, Carla. My name is Dan. I'm a publicist. Carla. I called Meryl Streep Carla. I called Meryl Streep Carla. She looked at me like, what? Like this. Like the RCA Victor dog, remember? Like what? And she pulled her hand out, walked away. My heart's beating, my hands are shaking. My friend Carla goes, Dan, you just called Meryl Streep Carla. I said, I did? Really?
Because you didn't even hear yourself.
I have no memory of that. So to this day, when I saw her later in the afternoon, and when I went to talk to her, she thought I was Lee Harvey Oswald, so she fled every time she saw me. So that's my biggest blunder by far, was calling Meryl Streep by the wrong name. Meryl Streep.
But it makes a great story.
It does.
I've had friends crying, laughing, literally crying, laughing.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Great story. That's my best one. I have a good Julia Louis-Dreyfus story. If you'd like that one. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. At the very first Environmental Media Awards was 1992, I think it was, at Sony Studios. I was the publicist on the red carpet. We had press from all over the world. It was huge. With so many big stars there. We had Crosby, Stills and Nash, Sting, Shirley MacLaine, Al Gore was the vice president. We had so many major people for that one. So I'm on the red carpet, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus from Seinfeld is the very last celebrity to come onto the red carpet. And, that show was only big for maybe a year at that time. So she was not yet as famous as she is now. But she was a known person, but not a superstar like she is now. I had met her at a luncheon a few months earlier for the Environmental Media Awards. We talked at a luncheon. So I had already met her. So imagine the scene. There's bleachers with all the press in the world, like the Oscars. There's bleachers, all the press in the world. There's a sound stage where the event's going to happen. There's a red carpet. There's me. And now here comes Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Julia comes with I think it was a sky blue, beautiful dress. And there's a tag, a sales tag on her dress, like this, sticking out, a sales tag, sticking out from her dress. Right? So I ran up to her. I go, Julia, you have a sales tag on your dress. She goes, oh my God, do something. So I somehow ripped off the tag without ruining the dress. And that's the most amazing part of this story. But I ripped off the tag. And I said, Julia, all the press in the world is right there. And she goes, oh my God, can you even imagine? And we started laughing so hard we were crying, laughing. Because she would have done all the press in the world with a sales tag.
Oh, gee.
And she would never have gotten over that, right? It would have been horrible. So that's when I bonded with Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Good bonding story. That's great.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's great.
I love that story. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. Well, Dan, we haven't really talked about what the job of a publicist entails. What do you do as a publicist, and what advice would you give to someone who wants to be a Hollywood publicist?
Most people think, well, okay, there's different kinds of Hollywood publicists. Most people think a Hollywood publicist is a celebrity publicist. A celebrity publicist that gets their, clients into the media, walks the red carpets with them, and goes to parties and events and makes sure that they're in the press or not in the press. And there's a lot of people in Hollywood who are celebrity publicists. And I've only handled a few. I don't consider myself a celebrity publicist. I did have Jay Leno for years. I had Sid Caesar for years. I had Dixie Carter for a while. But I've never considered myself a celebrity publicist. So that's one thing, is you take care of your celebrity. I was always more maybe a corporate entertainment publicist. Most of my clients that I've had in the last 30 years have been production companies, post-production companies, independent films, um, CD releases, video games, books, art shows, entertainment lawyers. So I don't specialize in celebrities, and here's two big reasons why. Celebrities will call you at 3 a.m. and they'll yell at you, "How come I'm not the cover
Yeah.
of People magazine?" And celebrities don't pay publicists very much. I remember Lee Salters uh, charged Barbara Streisand like $1,000 a month, and I once said to him, "Why so little?" He goes, "She's Barbara Streisand. If you have her, you can get anything. You can call the New York Times and get Stephen Eady, who he had also. You can call anyone and leverage Barbara Streisand for your other clients." So big celebrities don't pay a lot of money, and they call you in the middle of the night and they cry because they're not on the cover of TV Guide. So that's why I never did celebrity. I've made a very good living handling companies. For when I started my business, I had every special effects company. Literally, I had every special effects company in Hollywood. I had every broadcast design company in Hollywood. I had every music production library in Hollywood. I was the guy for PR, for behind the scenes artisans. Variety now
Mhm.
has a section called artisans, but I invented PR, not invented, but I made a very good living being the publicist for artists behind the scenes.
But didn't you work on, promoting Ghostbusters and,
That
films like that?
well, I worked on the real Ghostbusters TV show. That's when I worked at Columbia Pictures Television. That's long before I had my own business. That was long
Mhm.
before I had my own business.
Well, tell us what's next for you and what would you like our audience to have as a takeaway today?
Um, I'm still a Hollywood publicist. If anyone out there has an interesting project or a restaurant, I love doing PR for restaurants. It's been tremendous fun. I'm trying to get the pantry for next year. The pantry will turn 100.
Oh.
I'm in touch.
Mhm.
Oh,
I'm in touch with Mayor Reardon's daughters. They own the pantry, and that turns 100 next
I didn't know that.
year.
Hmm.
Mayor
And
Reardon.
you also have a new book coming out too, right?
I have Flirting with Fame was my first book. I wrote a sex book that came out last year about sex addiction and how I overcame that, and that's called Carrot. And nobody on the planet cared about that book. No one cared at all. So I don't really talk about it very much. That was a
Mm.
passion project for me. My third book came out March 1st this year. It's called After They Came. It's a science fiction novel. It's about benevolent aliens who come to Earth and they save a man who is drowning himself on his 70th birthday. He's drowning himself in the Pacific because he hates his life. He's miserable and he's suicidal. He hates his life. As he's drowning, a huge UFO shoots up from the Pacific, beams him on board, saves his life, and then they goes to Dodger Stadium, and the aliens are beautiful, tall, Nordic, long white hair, pale white skin. And they go, "People of Earth, don't be alarmed. We love you. We're here to save mankind, and we're here to solve all your problems. But we'll only work with this guy who we just fished out of the ocean. We have a relationship that's very special with this guy. So bring your problems to him, and we will work through him." In a nutshell, that's After They Came. Now, I have been getting press all over the world for that book. I am the darling of the UFO research community. The last 3 months, I
Hmm.
have made friends with major UFO researchers around the world. I've gotten reviews on that book from the top UFO researchers literally in the world. And
Wow.
they've all told me it needs to be a movie. So I need help to make After They Came into a movie. That's my goal right now in life. That and
Nice.
that and live to see my daughter get married. Those are my only two goals I have left in life.
Great.
My
You have another book coming out too, don't you?
next spring, I have my fourth book. It's going to be called My Paranormal Life, and that's ghosts, poltergeists, goblins, UFOs, um, angelic voices, ESP, mind reading. These are all, I look back at my life starting from the age of 5. I had an interesting encounter when I was 5. I was climbing a billboard sign with some little girlfriends, and I fell off a sign when I was 5 years old. I fell, and I remember clearly falling through the air. And the next thing I did is I woke up on a couch in a house down the street from my house. And when I woke up, there was a creature leaving the house, and the creature was this big white, evil, odd-looking thing with wings. And he snorted at me, and he left. And I think it was a gargoyle, believe it or not. I've researched gargoyles protect people in buildings. So I think a gargoyle saved me when I was 5. It's a clear vision. My mother goes, "You were dreaming. It was just a dream." I go, "Mom, no. It's my very first memory. I remember it clearly." It's a lot of weird off the wall stuff. I'm very much into supernatural, paranormal. I've seen 3 UFOs. So that one's called My Paranormal Life, and that comes out next March.
Well, we can't wait to
Fabulous.
read that.
Sounds
Yeah,
fun.
it sounds wonderful. Thank you, Dan.
Oh,
Our guest today on Late Boomers has been Dan Harary, publicist extraordinaire, who has bumped shoulders with more celebrities than you can count, owner of the Asbury PR agency of Beverly Hills, and author of 3 books to date, Flirting with Fame, Carrots, After They Came. You can buy them on Amazon. And you can reach Dan at danhararyauthor.com and asburypr.com. Thank you again, Dan.
oh, so much fun, man. That went so quickly. That was great.
Yeah. We want to remind you, our listeners, to follow us on Instagram at I am Kathy Worthington and at I am Mary Elkins. And please subscribe to our new YouTube channel, Late Boomers Podcast, where you can watch our conversation with Dan. And also, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much again, Dan.
Thank you. It was so much fun. I'd love to do it again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Late Boomers, the podcast that is your guide to creating a third act with style, power, and impact. Please visit our website and get in touch with us at lateboomers.biz. If you would like to listen to or download other episodes of Late Boomers, go to ewnpodcastnetwork.com.
This podcast is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most other major podcast sites. We hope you make use of the wisdom you've gained here and that you enjoy a successful third act with your own style, power, and impact.